One question from Blessing A. Manikandan. He says, after seeing the mental, physical, and financial stress people are undergoing after the COVID pandemic, the union government and RBI have not announced any solid COVID relief to the individuals and businesses. Whatever RBI has recommended has not been implemented by most of the financial institutions. Wouldn't it be a challenge to you and the state government during your tenure?
Yeah, so I just want to give you, I agree, and I want to say something. There's something called the State Level Bankers Committee. It's a committee of all the top bankers who operate in Tamil Nadu. I mean, in every state, but in Tamil Nadu for us. And so those meetings used to be called before, and they were more kind of, and there's a district level bankers committee, and others is like rote. I was called to one when I was an MLA, and I realized these things are meaningless, and I just stopped going. But we called a bankers committee about around 10 days ago. And it was amazing. We had these bankers from all the banks. We had RBI and we had us. And it became clear that there were 3-4 breaks in the system. And we had people, when I say us, it wasn't just the finance department, it was the industries department, the small scale industries department. It was all the commercial tax, whoever, interfaces with business people. And maybe I'll release my speech, though it's not intended to be public. But I said, as a former banker, I empathize with you on all these things, but we are living in extraordinary times. Because even as the economy is going into the doldrums or crashing, we have highest level of bank deposits and highest level of market valuation. So something is structurally wrong. This, I've already talked about this earlier. This is the death of monetary policy. You keep on pumping money, it keeps on doing asset inflation, doesn't do anything to the real economy. That's a different topic for a different day. But in this meeting, I said to them, can we just go through? And it became very clear there were 2 or 3 big problems. Many of the bankers did not understand what all the RBI had provided. He's exactly right, Mr. Manigan is exactly right. And many of the small businesses did not understand what the banks were providing, even for those banks that knew what all the RBI had provided. So immediately, the RBI, at my request, actually partially they started and then I request them to formalize it. The RBI Chennai, I said, please hold a meeting, call all of the state bankers, include our government officials into the meeting, and run an explanatory session. What all have you provided? What reliefs? What is acceptable? What is not? Ensure that they fully understand the relief that the RBI has provided. Then the bank said, we will go ahead and call these SMEs, MSMEs, and try to, I said, let's do it together. Let the MSME department and the banks in every district call the entrepreneurs, the micro, the small, the medium, explain to them, these are the benefits or relaxations or kind of restructuring terms available, who all are eligible, what can be done. Therefore, we may or may not agree that what has been done now is enough. But it is a loss for all of us that what has been done till now has not even been fully understood, let alone fully executed. Of course, there's a role for the state government in that, in the sense that we have a small scale industry department, we have people in every district, we have a secretary, we have a minister. So through that department, if need be, the finance department can join with them. But we first need dissemination from the RBI to the banks, and then from the banks to the borrowers. And wherever the government can facilitate, we'll facilitate. And then they asked us, how about you run advertisements as a government explaining the schemes? I said, absolutely, we'll do that. I mean, it's the least we can do. So once everybody is kind of brought up to speed, then if the government of Tamil Nadu has to run advertisements saying these are the RBI relaxations and these are the bank relaxations and MSME players, though newspaper advertisements are the least effective way of getting the message out. As the head of the DMK IT wing, I know there's probably 10 more cost-effective, directed, targeted ways to do it. So we look at that also. But on principle, we agree that we have a role to play to facilitate this greater advantage and greater understanding, and therefore greater number of people taking advantage of what exists. And then we may still argue that more needs to be done, but we'll do that also. But this is typical of this system. This is typical of the government. I'm not saying everybody has bad intentions. I'm not saying not enough people have good intentions. Many people have good intentions. There's a big gap between intention and outcome. The execution fails in many ways, many more ways than you can think of.
Sure. Another question, and probably this is again, few people have asked this question. Now, one thing as Chennai that we aren't probably proud of is the Chennai airport. So, and it's also very important, right? As for a major metro to bring in business. So, what are the plans to upgrade, or what are the plans for the Chennai airport going forward?
Yeah, again, I should be careful to not speak beyond my department or beyond broad philosophy. I'd say that it's very well known, if you may recall, that even when Palanivel Kalaignar ran the government, this has already been discussed. They talked about a greenfield airport in Sriperumbudur, and then government change happened and all that. So I would say it is firmly on the Chief Minister's radar. We understand that the airport we have now is not nearly adequate for a city of our scale as Chennai. Or, of course, that doesn't mean we're not going to focus on development of the other airports. We still have a lot to do in Madurai. Just today, for example, when I flew from Chennai to Madurai, the airport director met me and presented the state of progress on the airport expansion in Madurai. I've called a meeting with the collector on Monday to finish the land acquisition and get into the kind of runway extension. But anyway, so all across Tamil Nadu, we have these constraints. The money is not going to be the greatest constraint. I think that if we do our job well and govern properly and show the kind of right attitude to the fisc, then there's a global glut of liquidity and the luxury of somebody like me. I have good relationships with most of the major investors in the world who were my clients when I was an investment banker or a big commercial banker. And relationships matter a lot in finance, as you know. Credibility, trust that was built over years matters a lot. But the problem in the case of the airport is land. And as I said before, like with any other project, you need to find a large enough stretch of land that meets that criteria, that's on the one hand close enough to the city, no more than an hour or so away. And, I think anything is possible. The Chief Minister will look at many options, but it's firmly on the radar of the Chief Minister.
Sure, thank you. And coming to the last question, so what is the role of startups in the Tamil Nadu development game, and any plans to, and one constant demand has been put to you. I'm not too sure that it comes under your department, but whether, the government can set up co-working spaces where at subsidized rates across, because we see a lot of government offices where companies can hire, but say if somebody wants 2-3 seats or 4-5 seats, can that be set up across? And as a government, where do startups come in the development game of Tamil Nadu?
Yeah, again, I think, I shouldn't exceed my brief. So it's not my department. It should come either in the IT department or the MSME department. But we've had 2-3 discussions about this. So I've been involved in these discussions. So I'll briefly say that we talk about many things, right? Like we have this thing called the Guidance Bureau, which is equal to the single window clearance for large corporates, particularly multinational corporates that come into Tamil Nadu. I have long felt and expressed openly that we need something equivalent of that for the MSMEs and in the districts. Those are the people. The big guys always get taken care of anyway. It's the little guys who don't know how to avoid the rent seeking and navigate the system and all this stuff. So if we really want to support entrepreneurship generally, independent of tech, startup and all that, we need to fundamentally improve our kind of support systems and single window approach. And I've said this as an opposition MLA, so my position hasn't changed. It's not my department. I'm just saying this is what logic would say. Separately, many different people have come to us. I've already spoken at the CII and other places where they've said we need a more kind of conducive partnership approach to these things. Again, I think the macro factors are in our favor. There used to be a time when Tamil Nadu was very unattractive, and places like Andhra in Sri City, my REC senior, Mr. Reddy, promoter of Sri City, were seen as much more attractive, and that has changed a lot in the last 2-3 years. So it is the cycle is swinging our way, or the pendulum swinging our way. And I think with my colleague, the Honorable Minister for Industries, Thangam Tenarsi, the Honorable Minister for Small Scale Industries, Mr. Tamo Anbarasan, with the IT Minister, Honorable Minister Manu Tangaraj. These are discussions we need to have. Of course, many people have approached me, either from the Venture Capital Association or from the startup or from small scale. And I keep saying it's not my day job. So I apologize. I can be a facilitator. I can be an intermediary. I should not go into fields that have nothing to do with my portfolios. And so I don't want to say too much. I would say that these are all in process. And the things we're thinking about, should we have a separate ecosystem to support startups of all types? Should it be only about tech startups separately and other startups separately? Should it be about MSMEs, independent of tech? I mean, these are all the questions and it's not like philosophical questions. It's about practical questions about in what way can we provide the exact right resource. For example, most of the tech startups don't care about getting facilitation with government departments. They don't need 50 licenses. But if you want to start up a small scale local business, then you need to get all kinds of clearances and licenses and approaches and all that. So, how should we design this in a way that it is transparent, accountable, performance trackable by the chief minister, so that it doesn't just die in that department. On the one hand, it has to be in the department. On the other hand, the chief minister's office every day should be able to tell how many people came, how many were processed, how many have had good outcomes, how many are in queue, why are we not processing these? So those kinds of things, I think, will be done by the right people. And to the extent that they ask me to help and support, I will. For example, the CII was not my day job. So when they asked me to come, I said, I'm not sure I should speak. Why don't you go ask the industries minister? And they said, no, he spoke last week. And then he said to follow up with you. I said, okay, then under those circumstances, I'll come. And whatever I spoke there, I called back the honorable minister and updated him and said, this is what happened. So that's how, we're a team. At some level, we work with each other. At some other level, in politics, you should learn to stay within your brief and not kind of step on others' toes. So that's also practical.
Thank you so much, Minister. It's been a pleasure. I think you've been very generous with your time. Lastly, I think the last few months have been very busy. Once you've taken over as Finance Minister, I think your days have got longer. How are Mrs. Margaret and the two children adapting to the new change? Do you get time with family?
Yeah, actually, I try my best to separate what I do outside. I'm very blessed. My wife is a very conscientious person, a good mother. And as you know, she was also a bachelor's in industrial engineering, master's in engineering management, working as a manufacturing engineer and a designer of production lines. So she brings that kind of professionalism and diligence to everything. So I'm very blessed that she takes care of everything else and leaves me to do public service. And, I try my best to spend as much time as I can with them, because I think for me, that was the one thing that I said I cannot sacrifice. I can come to public service, forego success or recognition or financial gains that I would get had I continued as a managing director in a bank. But I certainly can't cut down my time with my family. Of course, you have to sacrifice some. But this is one of the reasons why I say I never want a job any bigger than the job I have now. This is, as I said, I didn't even ask for this job. When the ministry possibility came up, I asked to be HR&C minister. Though all ministries are equally important, and at some level, HR&C is even more important because it's the protection of our identity, of our culture, of our legacy. The scope of the portfolios I have now, from finance to pensions and benefits to planning to human resources, is so large. And as a first-time minister, I've got so much to learn and so far to come that I don't really have the kind of luxury of doing much else. So this is a bigger job than I ever wanted or asked for in my life. But the great luxury of this job still is that it's about Tamil Nadu. So it is about a state that I know well. It is about people whose cultures and backgrounds and history I know. It's a place where I or my forefathers have a lot of connectivity. So wherever I go, I know who to call. I have natural goodwill or affinity or connectivity. And it's of a scale of a problem that is manageable, about 70, 80 million people and a state. I have absolutely no desire to ever get a job bigger than this. And I have absolutely no desire to ever go to Delhi, even as an MP, let alone as a minister, because the scale of the problem is so much infinitely higher. And the diversity, which I know nothing about, I spent 30 years as an expat. It's taken me this long to get reconnected with a state that I had deep ties to. And my 5 years as an MLA plus the IT wing head, I kept touring the state every 6 months. So I've been to every nook and corner and made up for the gap and reconnected the centuries and generations of connectivity. So I am in the best place and the highest place that I ever wanted to be in life, not just in public life, but in life, because this is as great a responsibility as I've ever imagined. And I have no desire to do anything more than this, because even with this, as you say, I'm not really getting as much time with my wife and children as I'd like. And very soon they'll be off to college. And I don't want to waste or lose the window of opportunity that I have with them. So I try. I should do better, but I never lose that. That is the greatest priority of my life. These other things come and go. My family is my family forever.
Absolutely. And I think now Tamil Nadu too is your family. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And you've been very patient and answered every question in depth. I'm sure everybody enjoyed this session. I can't thank you enough. I think on behalf of Iimbaa, thank you for accepting our invitation and addressing us. Again, we look forward to the next 5 years with a lot of hope. 5, 10, however longer. And I think you are at the center of our development dream, the TN development dream. And as much as you said, you don't want to leave Tamil Nadu to go to Delhi or further. I think every Chennai or every Tamil Naduite, be a person from Madurai or Coimbatore, doesn't want to leave his home soil. And I think we are a beautiful state, and if it can grow from strength to strength, I think nothing like it. Thank you so much.
No, I just want to commend this initiative that I saw about the vaccines. I think, all crises exacerbate inequality. This one has been no exception. And in this age of kind of vaccine inequality, I am very, very happy to see, and I hugely commend this initiative to make sure that the underprivileged have access to vaccinations. And so, I commend you for it. I applaud you for it. And thank you for doing it as an association.